Welcome in, everyone. We are so grateful that you are joining us for this latest episode of Knowledge is Power, Navigating Special Education. This is our third episode. I point that out for a specific reason. During this segment, several times you will hear us mention that it's the second episode, and it was indeed the second episode that we filmed. However, before we aired it, we were hearing from numerous parents voicing concerns about the topic of retention or students being held back a grade. And we felt it was imperative that we address that topic in the moment. So if you have not seen that segment, we do invite you to go back and watch. A lot of good information in that one. However, we're ready now to get back on our original track. So in this segment, we're going to be discussing developmental milestones for birth to 2.5 years old. That is a very specific age, but also a very critical one, as you will find out. So thanks so much for joining us. We hope you'll enjoy the information, and we hope that you'll share it with someone that you believe will benefit from it. Good day, everyone, and welcome back to the second edition of Knowledge is Power, Navigating Special Education. I am joined once again by Willie Glass, and I am Melanie Posey. We have just come together really to encourage, empower, and educate parents on how to navigate the process of special education for your child and your student, because it can be very tricky. We just found that there was a need to get this out there. And so we're so excited to share our second segment. We're going to get a little bit deeper today, but the first thing that we started with last time, we touched briefly on why we are doing these videos. And so Willie, just if you will, touch again very briefly on why we felt this was so important to come together and share with the community.
Okay, absolutely. In the last segment, we talked about the historic and the foundation of special education. We talked about in reference to why special education is so important, why, special education was included back from 1954, Brown versus Board of Education, that inclusion piece. And then we went on historically to talk about when in 1975, was Section 504 was put in place as it relates to preventing discrimination against children with disabilities. We went on into 1990s. Mainstreaming, but let me go back. As it relates to when Individual with Disabilities Education Act was included and put in place. And then we went on into the 90s, into the 2000s, the mainstreaming. So we gave you all a full picture as it relates to understanding the foundation of special education, because I don't think we have enough conversations about that. Understanding the foundations, understanding the myths, understanding the misunderstanding, the misperception of special education and how it's important. So we're back.
We are back. And one thing we wanted to do with these segments, because as I mentioned in the first one, we had Willie on the show Law Call, which I host on Sunday nights, and we just did not have enough time to really dig deep into this topic, the different nuances of it. And so that really is our goal with these pieces that we're doing, that we have the time, we're not interrupted, we can talk as in-depth as we feel we need to help parents learn and grow in this area. We are trying to keep these segments to 30 to 45 minutes. We'll cover what we can in that time period. If we need to cut it off and go to a new segment, we'll do that, because we don't want to overwhelm folks. We know that folks are busy today. They don't have time to sit for hours. But look, you can throw us on while you're riding in your car, maybe from work. Maybe it's a 15-minute commute to work. You can listen to 15 minutes on the way to work, 15 minutes on the way home, and you'll have a segment for the day. So that's really our goal, is to get this information out as widely as we can to parents. So if you'd like to if you'd like to learn more about the historical piece that we talked about in that first segment, you will find that you can go back and do that. We'll include a link to where you can find all of that. But today we are talking about the two paths, or the two parts of the same federal law when it comes to special education, and that is IDEA, which stands for the
Individual with Disabilities Education Act.
And that's the one that we mentioned that was formed. I'm going to try to go back to my notes, Willie, here real quick. That was formed back in 1990, correct? 1990 is when that was formed. So there are two parts to that law. Tell me about those two parts that we today are specifically talking about.
Well, today what we're talking about, when Melanie mentioned those two parts, we decided that, it's important. We talked about the history, the foundation, but then when we look at from two different angles that I've learned in the community, again, this is not legal advice. So if we get something wrong, we misspoke something when it comes to the legalities of it, the disclaimer, we're not attorneys.
And let us know, because we'll go back, research it, and get it right for sure.
Absolutely. But those two parts is it's like a continuous path, Melanie, meaning early intervention and special education. Early intervention, is that part B of that law, Individuals with the Disabilities Education Act. That's part B, and that's that early intervention, whereas it looks at children from 0 to 3. And then part C, it goes from 3 to 21. And sometimes Mel and I get it mixed up. So again, if I misquoted that, let us know. But the point of that is two parts. Looking at that age group 0 to 3, and then looking at that age group from 3 to 21. And I like to point this out because the myth in the community is you may find a kiddo that is 3 to 5. And, some parents may say, well, I was told that, he can't be evaluated until he gets to kindergarten. And that is a myth. The special education is called preschool special education from 3 to 5. But you have that window period to get those babies evaluated as well. Absolutely. And that's why it's called a continuous path, because that 0 to 3 is that early intervention piece. Early intervention, like they said, the earlier the better. The earlier we identify, the earlier we can come in and do intervention methods in order to get that child where he needs to be. Keep that in mind, the earlier the better.
Yes.
Which makes me think about, CDC, the Center of Disease Control, offers what I like what I love is Act Early. Act Early meaning they have this simple handout that you can go online and get, and it gives you the developmental milestones of a child. I want to say from 0 to at least 48 months. I want to say it might be 60 months, 5 years old.
So before you even get into that, if I can just interrupt you very quickly, because we do want to get into this. So if folks need to grab a pen or paper, or get your notes out on your phone so you can write this down. And here's why I interrupted you. Because these segments are not just for parents who are currently dealing with this. This is where we talk about even parents, women that are pregnant.
Oh, absolutely.
So this is information. Let's say that somehow a friend shared this with you and you're like, I don't even have kids yet. Maybe you don't yet, but it's good to know early that these things start at birth, that these are things you can start looking out for from the beginning. So that's why I just wanted to interrupt you to let folks know, hey, it's not just kids in school. These are even women who are pregnant might find this informational useful. So with that, I interrupt you. I'm gonna let you go back. Because one of the questions when we were talking that I told Willie I wanted to talk about was red flags that parents can look out for. But my question to her was, well, Willie, where can folks go to know what the red flags are, to know what the milestones are? And that is when you mentioned to me about that CDC Act Early milestone. So let me go back to you again. Let me ask you this directly. Tell us again what that is. And I assume you can just go to the CDC's website to find it? Okay.
Absolutely. And they give you those red flags. Okay. Meaning those develop milestones. And like you stated, for a new parent, that just had a child, you want to make those observations and follow those developmental milestones. But developmental milestones from birth on up, because that's very important. For example, just give an example. Say for example, I like to use tummy time.
Tummy time, yes.
I like to use
I remember
tummy time.
Yes.
And I don't know if they use it today.
Oh, they still do tummy time. Trust me. It just takes you back to when they were so little. Look, I have a teenager that I just want to, and there's like, tummy time. It was such a great time. And we thought it was cute, but I'm assuming what you're going to say is it was important.
It was important. Absolutely. Yes. It was important because at a certain period, even during birth, even I want to say I'm not a physician, yeah. But during tummy time, even when you take the child to your pediatrician, they're doing tummy time to see if that baby is able to lift his head. They're seeing if that baby is able to move his head from side to side. Just say about 4 months, rolling over. You know, they're making observations. And back when, we relied on the pediatrician, you know, to let us know if that child is meeting the developmental stones. But today, we can work alongside that pediatrician in order to make those observations in what we call the natural environment. The natural environment is in the home, in your home. Whereas you're making those observations as well, because that is important. And so, Melanie, going back to your question, red flags, say if that child is not meeting that developmental milestone, say at 4 months, that child is not rolling over, or by 7 or 8 months, not rolling over. You know, that's a red flag. Say if that child is unable to hold his head up, that flex, being able to hold his head up or turn his head, you know, from side to side, that's a red flag. And if we see those red flags, that's okay. That's okay. I think, you know, what happens in society has, you know, society has conformed us with panic alerts when it's not necessary. I like to tell parents all the time, if you see a red flag, that's when we want the experts to come in and guide us. That's when we want the experts to come in and evaluate, to rule out that concern. You know, I've seen in the community, whereas no evaluation occurs, and, you know, the parent is just told, you know, they'll grow out of it, or, you know, every child develops differently. That is true. That is so true. So I'm not disagreeing, you know, with that response or that approach. But what I've learned is my preference is an expert in that area, being able to evaluate and rule it out versus verbally being told. And I know parents, you know, I've heard some parents say, well, you know, I've been told that, you know, well, let me use myself for an example.
Okay.
Let me do that.
Yeah.
So that would give the foundation of why I say this. You know, as a grandparent, you know, my family was told, well, he'll grow out of it.
Okay.
And he didn't.
Okay.
Unfortunately, as it relates to his language ability, he didn't grow out of it. So acting early helped us, because we act early, because we had to get the expert, which was a licensed psychologist, to tell us whether or not this was a concern to be concerned of, whether or not this is something that this child is is at the developmental stage he needs to be. We needed the expert to collect the data and make that determination. So I'm sure parents out there, and this is something that I speak from, again, lived experience. I'm one that's going to probably speak what the community may not want to hear, but I'm only giving you my lived experience. And one of them is, you know, being told by the experts that this child will grow out of it, whereas that child did not grow out of it. We had to get the appropriate services in place in order to build. So looking at those developmental milestones, actually going to cdc.gov at Act Early.
We talked also about making sure that you go to those pediatrician appointments very early as well.
Oh, absolutely. That is important. Because keep in mind, you all, we're talking about that birth to 3.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about birth to 3 as it relates to those developmental milestones, acting early. And like Melanie made mention, and thank you for that, the well child visits. Mm-hmm. Well child visits from birth on up, it started, if not mistaken, maybe 2 weeks, then 2 months, 4, 6, and 9.
Yes.
Then I think it moves either from 9 to 12 or 9 to 15. I want to say 9, 12, then 15.
Okay.
But being able to make sure and ensure your child makes those well child visits, because keep in mind, what you're doing is you got your tool. I call it your tool, your act early screening tool, whereas you are making observations of those developmental milestones. You're having those conversations with your pediatrician if you notice red flags. And then it don't necessarily have to be red flags to have that conversation with the pediatrician. You initiate that conversation, letting them know where he met this developmental milestone. He's lifting his head. You initiate the conversation. That's why I tell Melanie, it's more educational. The purpose of this is more educational.
Yes.
Connecting with the community, helping the parents become confident in building their team. That's another thing I would love to talk about. That first team member should be your pediatrician.
That's good.
That's your first team member, your pediatrician. Whereas in partnership, we're working alongside our pediatrician for the best interest of this child. That goes a long way, and it builds your knowledge base, because you may see a developmental red flag and then you research it to understand it and have that conversation with your pediatrician.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about 0 to 2.5 years old, because that is critical to address some of these issues by 2.5.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
We talked about, and again, I'm glad, you brought that up, because even though I'm saying early intervention 0 to 3, it's kind of like a stop clock as it relates to getting that child through that evaluation process.
Okay.
Meaning when you're going through that early intervention process, you begin the services, and once that child begins to move towards that 33 months, like 3 months before age 3.
Okay.
And keep in mind, we talked about it's 2 pathways, continuous pathways, as it relates to Individuals with Disability Education Act. So that early intervention, because the requirement states, under the law states that once that child begins to progress towards age 3, that transition piece that we talked about earlier in the last segment, that transition piece began to kick in.
Okay.
Meaning 33 months, between 33 and 36 months, that evaluation process begins.
So let me stop you there. So I'm a new parent, and I have a child that I think has a developmental delay. I bring it to my pediatrician. My pediatrician agrees and recommends evaluation. Or my pediatrician may not agree. As you mentioned, if you feel, especially as a parent, that there may be something there, then I go and I get a second opinion. I go to an expert and they tell me, yes, there is a developmental delay. So this is between 0 and 2.5. So this is a question. So if there is a developmental delay, what happens then?
If that child is 2.5?
If that child is 0 to 2.5, what happens if there is indeed a delay?
If there is indeed a delay, you could do one or two things. You can do a parent referral.
And who am I referring to?
You're referring to early intervention.
To early intervention.
You can contact early intervention, and I think I put that number in there. Hopefully we could.
If not, we'll get it to it. Yeah, we'll get it. So let's say that someone's in California somehow and they're watching this. Is that through the state, or is that through your county, your city? Where do you find early intervention?
Early intervention, and I can't speak to other states because other states has different processes, regulations. But they would have to, I would say, contact either a community provider or a state level provider.
So would you do like a Department of Education for that, or do you get to that level yet? Or a county health department?
I would say speak with your pediatrician.
Speak with your pediatrician and let them know that you want to get early intervention services.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think that would be my best out because I don't want to misspeak.
Sure. Yeah.
But when we're talking about in Alabama,
yes.
Alabama has their own Alabama early intervention system.
I see. Okay.
And you can call.
Okay. So just Google Alabama early intervention system.
Right.
And find out how they would direct you from there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So I reach out to Alabama Early Intervention Services. What might I expect?
Okay. You can just let them know you want to do you have concerns about your child's development and you would like to do an early intervention referral. Okay. Simple as that.
So the parent can refer, and what's the other path? Is it a pediatrician referral?
It is.
Okay.
It is. Or it could be a community agency. Say, for example, that child is in Head Start, early Head Start.
Okay.
It can be in another agency.
Okay.
That child is in early Head Start, and they identify some concerns and have that conversation with the parent. The agency, with the parent's consent, can do that referral. It's many different pathways to do the referral. Okay. But going back to your question, if a parent has that concern, that parent don't necessarily have to wait on the expert, the pediatrician or Head Start.
Gotcha.
That parent can take control and do that referral. You know, I want to make that clear.
Yeah. It's empowering.
Yeah. Once the parent identify a concern. Okay. You know, I like to tell parents, keep in mind, you know, you're the driver. Yes. And as you're driving, you're kind of picking up those team members, because if you remember, I said, you know, the first team member is that pediatrician, but then if your child is in early Head Start, that's another team player, team member on your team, you know. So as you continue to go, you know, you begin to identify those people, those individuals or agencies that is working for the best interest.
Once I get into early intervention, what are some services that I might be eligible for under early intervention? Oh,
great question. Keep in mind, again, they're not in the business to label. It is a process.
So good to remind. Yes.
The early intervention of special education, both of them has to go through a data collection as well as an evaluation process. And I like to make this known because I had to learn this. Early intervention is more so parent education.
Okay.
We in the community, we talk a whole lot about the IEPs, individual education program. But then early intervention is an IFSP. Individual family service plan.
So that's like can you look at it as a pre-IEP, or don't even look at it like that?
I wouldn't say look at it like that, because the reason I put emphasis on individual family service plan is because that's from a family perspective. Yes. That's setting goals. What does this family want to see this child accomplish? Okay. If that makes sense. And then it's not necessarily, because think about it, like you said, can that be a pre-IEP? Not necessarily, because the IEP, individual education program, it used to be individual education plan, individual educational, the IFSP, individual family service plan, service plan. Meaning, you know, they're looking at it from the lenses of this family, what goals you want to see. Say, for example, if this child developmental stone, red flag was this child is not it's not walking at a certain time. You know what I'm saying? Then you have the physical therapist that may come in and educate that parent on strategies in order to help that child begin whatever those delays are. Okay. It's a team effort all the way, but in this segment, it's truly working with the caregiver, the child development programs. They want to teach them how to work with that child to get them, because you have that child more than they do. You know, I know parents complain about, you know, they just only want to give them 30 minutes a month or 30 minutes twice a month. educate.
Mm-hmm.
We want to come in. We're going to work with your child, but we want to come in and educate you how to work with your child.
Yes.
So we can be in good partnership
That's
to make
good.
sure that child is getting what he needs. So, and just keep in mind, let me say this, because another myth is, when that child is not necessarily a myth, but between 33 and 36 months, the families are protected under the law. Whereas when that agency, early intervention agency, is getting ready to transition that child from early intervention to preschool special education, that's a process.
Okay.
Coming in early intervention is a process, evaluation process.
Okay.
And then transitioning out is an evaluation process.
Okay.
Now, at 27 months, that conversation about transition happens then.
Okay.
It happens before 33 months. And at that time, parents have the option to opt out.
Okay. So meaning no longer receive services?
Not longer. They have an opportunity to opt out and not go through that transition process.
Okay.
Because the transition process starts at 33 months. The transition conversation starts at 27 months.
Okay. So it's like at 33 months, this is what we're going to do.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And they have that opportunity to opt out.
Why would a parent choose to opt out?
I would say, in my opinion, you have parents from different. When a parent is dealing with a child, in my opinion, my experience is, dealing with so much information coming into them as it relates to getting services, getting evaluations done. Also, sometimes denial. I hate to put that out there, but sometimes denial, and then wrong with my kid. My kid don't need this. I get all of that.
Okay.
And then sometimes it's the process, the approach of how it's being explained. Let me say that as well, in fairness. And sometimes they just don't understand what is being presented.
I see.
Meaning I feel like when a parent does not understand what is being presented, it's all about the approach of how I'm presenting it to you. Because as the expert, and I'm changing hats from lived experience to the expert, working with families, we must make sure we understand that parent understands what I am informing them. The information I'm providing, I want to make sure you understand it. So it's an array of things that makes a parent opt out.
Okay.
Because what I've learned in my profession is when they opt out, and then I'm working with a family with a child who's 3, and they say he had early intervention. And the reason I'm working with them, because we're trying to get him pre-K special education services, because there's been a lot of red flags the parent has identified, as well as whatever agency I'm working with. So that opt-out should not have taken place.
I see.
Now, like you posed the question, why would a parent opt out? It's an array of reasons why.
Okay.
But I like to stand on, some great possibility that parent really didn't understand what opting out was, one of the two, or denial.
Okay.
Hoping that, this will go away. Yeah, absolutely.
So let me back up before we get there really quickly, because I want to talk about the services. When we talked about it before, you mentioned that speech, OT, and PT are services that parents might be able to get under early intervention, and that those services are free. There is no cost. So so it may mean someone in that field coming to the home, working it maybe once a month, as you said, but they're working with the parent to teach, this is the delay, this is how we can work to help the child progress.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I just want to point that out, that those are some of the services you can receive under early intervention, and they are free, because not everybody can afford those services.
Absolutely.
So those are the free services you might be able to receive. Early intervention, go online, and we'll also, when we get this up, we'll include some links to resources as well. 27 months is when that conversation begins to say, at 33 months, we're going to start talking about transitioning. At 33 months is when that conversation begins, and parents have the option to either continue with
the transition process
or to opt out.
And I like to tell parents that goes back to what I made mention about having the experts to rule out.
Whether to opt out.
Yes, absolutely. Because you're in between that 33 and 36 months, one or two things is going to happen. Okay. Either you're going to go through that evaluation process with the school district you're zoned for, in order to, which they would be the experts, go through the evaluation process and rule out. And I've seen it. They would say this child is where he needs to be. Okay. He does no longer needs to continue. Or early intervention, if not mistaken, they would do their own data collection and kind of stop it there. But again, my point is I would allow the experts to go through whatever process it is and then rule it out. And then I tell parents all the time, then just say when that child is getting into Head Start or pre-K or kindergarten and anything comes up, you have your data, in order to say, well, he was evaluated and they told me this, this, and this, versus stating, well, they say he didn't need it anymore. Where's your data? Do you have a report showing that? So I always say, I tell any parent, collect your own data in order to present to the experts, because you're the number one expert as it relates to your child. And if you collect your data accurately, then you can present it accurately.
We are right at 30 minutes. We mentioned 30 to 45 minutes. Let me ask you this. Do you think we should get into Act 3, or should we stop here for now? Because I know we've covered a lot. And should we begin another segment where we start from 3 to 5 and then go from 5 into elementary school?
Let's stop here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to do that. We're going to go ahead and stop. Hopefully that 0 to 2.5 years is critical. That 0 to 2.5 years is critical in terms of noticing those delays. You as a parent going to the CDC, getting that information, working with your number one team member, your pediatrician, doing those well child visits. If you feel like you need more, not being ashamed, not being afraid to say, I'd like another opinion, or I'd like to have them evaluated. You as a parent, if you want to go on and Google early intervention and find out how you can get some of those services, doing that on your own as well.
And let me say this. When we talked about those developmental milestones and I kind of gave examples about from the physical aspect, like rolling over, crawling, lifting, all of those was from that physical. But let me say this, what I see a lot is that receptive and expressive language. When we're looking at those developmental milestones, we want to, think about, when that child gets to be 12 months, we always ask the question, what words are he saying? And some parents would say, he say bye-bye, he say bye-bye. Hey, is he saying dad now? Is he saying mama? So those are important, those are expressive language. And parents get it confused because we say, we just want speech. Speech and language goes hand in hand, but they're two different areas.
Explain that, if you will.
Meaning speech, we're looking at that articulation, the pronunciation, the phonics, even stuttering, speech. Let's put it over there. Then when we're looking at language, we're looking at receptive language, meaning it's the child understanding what is being spoken to him. Okay. Back when we was growing up, we understood because we had to go do this, go get me this, but not realizing our generation, our parents, was wise enough to make sure that we was following directions, following instructions. We probably looked at it from a different angle.
Yes, as a child.
But that was instilling in us to follow those 2, 3, 4 steps directions.
Good, Willie. That's so good.
Yeah, because we look at it like, oh, they're telling us, always telling us what to do. But no, they was building our skills, our language ability, our receptive language. So that receptive language, you may be asked, when you're in front of the experts, does he understand, this kiddo may be 2. Does he understand 1 to 2 direction? Meaning, go get get your shoe and come bring it to me. That's a red flag if he's not understanding simple directions. That's that receptive, understanding what is being spoken.
Let me say why this is so key, though, because you may have a parent who thinks that a child is being disobedient, and it sounds like from what you're saying, there may be something deeper there.
And I heard parents say, I think he can't hear. And that may not be the case.
Might not be that. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that I'm sharing my experience. With my grandson. I knew he could hear. But then I've learned receptively, he's not processing what I'm asking. He's not processing. He's not understanding, okay, go get that cup. What is a cup? And I know that sounds strange, but that is what we're seeing today.
Yes.
And I like to make the difference in these different parts of the speech and language entity, because the receptive is understanding what is being spoken. And then that expressive, you have kids that does not have those words.
That's the speech component. That's the speech component.
That's the language.
Oh, that's still language.
That's language.
Okay.
Expressive language.
Okay.
Expressive language. Again, that speech is just the articulation, meaning instead of him saying, my grandson, he deals with that. Instead of him saying, cat, he may say tat. That's articulation.
That's
that's speech.
Okay.
Then that expressive language, him being able to express, because if I can't express to you how I'm feeling, what's going on, that is, a part of that delay. That is part of being able, that communication piece. So if that expressive and receptive language, you want to listen closer to that and understand those three components. And I'm going to go a little step further.
Okay.
Because this is a part of the language don't nobody really talk about as well, that comes a lot with autism, is that pragmatic language. Pragmatic language is that piece that, that social piece. Okay. Knowing how to initiate play. Understanding.
Explain what does that look like?
With his peers.
Okay.
Pragmatic. A child with autism, the way I look at it is that social communication piece of it. And so therefore that pragmatic language is, how to, the kid may want to play with his peer, but he doesn't know how to initiate, and he may not want to play. So you got to teach him how to play. With his peers, some people say, this a loner, like they say autism is such a broad spectrum, and I have 2 boys in my home and they're totally different on the spectrum. Okay. Totally different. So you have that pragmatic language, whereas you could teach them how to play, because pragmatic language deals with that social play, in my opinion. I'm not a psychologist. I'm just going by, my professional and lived experience.
But that at least gives folks some things to start looking for. You're not saying that this is definitely what it is, but you're saying these are things you can be looking for.
Absolutely. And I may not have it in the full context.
Right.
As a licensed psychologist would.
Yes.
But I'm just giving you, what I've learned through my journey. Okay, that I did not know and was aware of.
I think it's so good.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm learning a lot. Okay. So thank you for that.
Good.
And our prayer and our hope is that folks that are watching are learning as well. That even if it's one thing that you say, oh, I didn't know that, or I didn't think about it that way. It may be that there's some folks out there who need to go back and apologize to their parents. You were always yelling at me as a kid, and today you learned, oh, they're actually helping me. The parents are like, yeah, I was helping you. I told you to go get that stuff. We laugh, but I never thought about it, that there's actually things that we were learning when those things happen, and that we can still be teaching today. So hopefully you've learned at least one thing. This is our second segment. We're gonna keep doing these, as many as we feel we can do, until we feel that the community has a strong knowledge base to really grow in this special education arena. So let us wrap up the second segment. We encourage you to go back and look at the first segment. Please share both segments or share it with someone that you think might benefit from it. And we're going to also get an email address so that if you have questions, you can email us questions that we can address as well. So hopefully you have learned and enjoyed this segment, and we will see you next time.